Good morning, everybody. Robyn here from Courage is the Cure. Welcome to Rise. Today we're going to be looking at the Stand Up Now Australia Censored at 16 webinar. We're going to be having a review of that. See you soon.
Strength of a woman world on her shoulders. Fight through the noise when the world gets colder. 832, got the grit, got the fire. Watch her rise, watch her come higher.
Okay, greetings everybody. Like I said, welcome to episode 64 of Rise. Today we're going to be doing a review time of the Stand Up Now Australia webinar that happened yesterday, Censored at 16. Of course, that's all to do with the upcoming under 16-year-old social media ban. Today's the 28th of November 2025. Hello to everybody on YouTube. We are streaming to YouTube today, so I'll watch what I say. Community guidelines and standards, not censorship. And speaking of the up-and-coming under 16-year-old ban, we all know that magical, wonderful things could happen to people's accounts who are above the age of 16. So you will be able to find my work with Rise on Rumble, and the channel is called Robyn's Hood. And for all of my relentless interviews on Rumble, please make sure you're subscribed to Courage is the Cure on Rumble. So that's two channels on Rumble, Robyn's Hood and Courage is the Cure. Okay, everybody, so let's get on with it. Here we go. Thumbnail once again, Stand Up Australia. Stand Up Now Australia had a webinar yesterday on the 27th of November, and the key speakers were Michael Arbin and Paul G. Conlon, and it was moderated by Chloe from Stand Up Now Australia. Was a very, very, very good webinar. Right, that's it. Review over. We're done. No, it was a very good webinar, I must say. So we are going to hear from Michael Arbin. He's going to take us through the very lightning fast timeline of the online safety amendment, the social media minimum age bill 2024. So he walked everybody through, as I said, the lightning fast timeline of that. So we're going to have a look at Michael speaking about that. Then we're going to hear from two teenagers. These teenagers weren't part of the webinar, but I think it's very important, particularly that we are so close to the under 16-year-old social media ban coming into effect on the 10th, that we hear from teenagers. So we're going to hear from two teenagers, one from SBS Insight and one with Digital Freedom Project. And then to end the show, we're going to hear from Paul G. Conlon, who spoke at the webinar, and he's going to talk to us about some tools, roles of the family and education. All righty, so let's get on with it, shall we? We cannot have any good episode of Rise without screening the share. We're going to screen the share to the recording of the webinar and hear from Michael Arbin first. And as I said, he's going to walk us through the lightning fast timeline of the Online Safety Amendment Social Media Minimum Age Bill of 2024. So here we go. We're going to hear from Michael Arbin.
Yeah, so Chloe, this bill was rushed through Parliament, and that's an understatement. So I think I've got open here sort of the timeline. So I'll probably just walk you through what happened with this bill over 12 months ago. Just over 12 months ago it passed now, or actually 2 days under 12 months ago it passed. So being a massive bill that touches on, privacy, freedom of speech, parental primacy, all of those things, you would expect this to be the kind of bill that would probably be introduced to Parliament and then immediately referred off to a committee, and you'd probably give the general public 3 months to provide submissions, hold public hearings, get a massive amount of feedback on it before you tweaked it, and then eventually tried to push it through Parliament if it was workable. What happened was the exact opposite. So on the 21st of November, this bill was introduced to the House of Reps. We were given no notice and it was just introduced to the House. Quickly in the Senate, we picked up on it. So the day after, in the Senate, it was referred to a committee because we thought, oh my goodness, this is the last sitting week of the year. They're going to jam this through in a week and get it done. So on the 22nd of November, one day later, it was referred to committee. Now, in Senate committees, you're usually allowed a period of time of, like I said, 1, 2, 3 months for submissions from the general public. You hold a number of public hearings, and then the report takes another month or two to be drafted and presented. The submissions were due by the 22nd of November, the day after the bill was referred to committee. So there was 1 day allowed for submissions to be received. In that 1 day, they received 15,000 submissions from Australians. Now, it's not uncommon for a Senate committee to receive a couple hundred submissions or a few dozen submissions, but 15,000 is out of this world. Of that 15,000, they only ended up uploading 107 submissions. So most of your submissions just went into the abyss. And the report from the committee was tabled on the 27th of November. So that was what, 6 days in total to try and work your way through 15,000 submissions and try and understand where the issues are with this bill and try and fix them. It's impossible. It was a scam. It was democracy circumvented. And often when a politician goes to a survey or a committee or something like that, they've already made their mind up what they're going to do. They're just doing that for due process, right? So what happened was the committee tabled their report on the 27th of November. So this is 6 days after the bill was first introduced to the House. The next day, the 28th of November, which was the Wednesday, it passed the House of Representatives. This is where it gets interesting. So the Senate is designed to be the House of Review. The Senate is the place where we're supposed to fix bad bills or reject them. On the 28th of November, it hit the Senate. And on that day in the Senate, there were 32 bills that passed in just a few hours. They used what they call a guillotine motion. And, you would expect as a voter that every bill was robustly debated in the Senate. It's fixed up, any errors or unintended consequences are found. And amendments are passed before a bill is voted on. You cannot pass 32 bills in a few hours and expect those bills to be of high quality. So the social media ban was one of those. Other bills included on that day were things like the help to buy, which is where the government can own 40% of your house if you can't borrow enough money to buy your own home. Build to rent, which is a system whereby big super funds and fund managers are being incentivized by the government with huge tax breaks to build houses they're not allowed to sell. They can rent them out only forever. So all these things passed on the same day and didn't receive any scrutiny that they deserve. So it made me really sad. As someone who works in Parliament and expects them to act in our best interest, it was a horrible process. And I think not enough people know what happened on that day. And the sad thing is, since that day, guillotine motions have been moved many times again. They do this all the time. And our Parliament, our separation of powers, the power of the Senate to reject bad bills and fix bad bills, it's been circumvented by party politics and towing the line and essentially voting along the party line and doing deals behind the scenes. It's not good enough. I'll let you add a bit to that, Paul, but that's sort of a basic summary of what happened. I could talk about it forever, but that's a little bit for you.
All right, everybody. So that was Michael Robyn speaking about the timeline of the bill last year. And if my calculations are correct along that timeline, hello, Joanne. Lovely to see you here. Thank you. This show is being shadow banned. Make sure you share it. If my calculations are correct from Michael's timeline there, it was pushed through in a matter of 8 days. And it's just astonishing. You know, we now are in 2025, so it's a year later, and we can see, you know, we've just had the last sitting week of Parliament conclude yesterday. And as Michael pointed out, you know, this guillotining of motions and just ramming them all through at once. I mean, Michael pointed out on the 29th of November, when the under 16 legislation hit the Senate, there was 32 other bills that day that were rammed through at the end of the year. It's just astounding, and points out that there's a kind of circumnavigating around the Senate where good and bad bills can be, you know, adjusted and all these sorts of things, and that's not happening because the leading party of the day, if you like, Labor Party, you know, everybody's just towing the line and all these sorts of things. Just going back and remembering that, and Michael pointing out that timeline, I mean, you know, there's so many things about Australian politics that needs to be tidied up and cleaned up. And if that's not one of them, you know, the guillotine motions, as Michael put it, if that isn't one of them, I don't know what is, because there's too many bills that get rammed through to the detriment of Australians. And, you know, ultimately, I guess that's what the intention is of ramming through bills like this at the end of the year. So I thought that's a nice story time. Go back in time, bit of a flashback with Michael Arbin about the timeline. All right, everybody. So we'll just stop screening the share there. We're going to hear from two teenagers. As I said, we're not very far away from the 10th of December. We hear adults rabbiting on about this a lot. Let's hear from some teenagers. First, we're going to hear from a young girl, Zoe, I think is her name. And let's remember that this week, if I'm not mistaken, it was brought to everybody's attention that there's a couple of young people that are the face of the ban being taken to the High Court, believing it is unconstitutional. So let's go ahead and find these wonderful young people. This is Zoe, and she appeared on SBS's Insight. I think she makes a very good point about future voters. Here we go.
The government will realise their mistake and we're going to be the ones that are voting next.
Zoe, you're 14. You have more than 10,000 followers on TikTok. Where do you stand on the social media ban?
I don't think it's going to work, and I don't think that it's fair. I think that social media has been around for years and it's going to stay, and by taking under 16s away, you're taking us away from part of the world.
Why do you think the government made this decision?
I don't think they understand social media. I don't think they understand how it works and what actually happens and how it's helpful.
Who do you think uses it better, older people or younger people?
Younger kids. All the hate that I've gotten is from older people.
Really?
Yeah.
Like what?
Like people that are older and say, oh, in the 70s I did this, in the 80s I did that, and like it's all negative stuff from older people, and then from younger people I've never really gotten anything negative.
How will the social media ban affect you and sort of that small business really in a way that you've started?
My account will be gone. A lot of my followers are like under 16, so that will be gone as well, and it also affects other influencers that are over 16 and have a career, and then a lot of their followers are under 16, and then their accounts are going to be gone, and then their influencers' accounts will be a lot smaller and they'll miss out on a lot of brand deals and all the work will be gone. It makes me sad because I love posting on TikTok. It's my creative outlet and I love to make my followers feel heard in the comment section. It won't have any benefits in my opinion. I think that the government will realise their mistake and we are going to be the ones that are voting next and they'll really come out.
So there we go, everybody. That was Zoe. I think her point about voters is very interesting. You know, and she mentioned that it's taking us, young people, away from part of the world. And, you know, whether or not you agree that young people should or shouldn't be on the internet, the fact of the matter is that they have been, and they have created their own communities, just like everybody else here watching, you know, that might be a liberty lover or a freedom fighter, as we have built our own communities. Young people have done that too. And I mean, she recognises that it will take her away from part of her world, you know, as that relates to her friends as well. She made a very interesting comment saying that she doesn't think that the government understands social media. Maybe, but quite possibly, I would assert that the government does, and they realise that the young people of Australia are outsourcing their information, not from government-approved corporate media lines, and they need to stop that because you know, the potential for truth and what would be viewed as dissenting voices, the number of those increasing, the more truth that young people access would be a concern for the government. So I would say that they do understand how social media works, and they've got to make sure that kids can't inform themselves. Alrighty, everybody, please share the show. I can see that. Yes, we are. We are being shadow banned. I can see the live viewers. We're going to hear from one more young man before we get back to the Stand Up Now Australia webinar. This young man is brought to us by the Digital Freedom Project. And he talks about isolation. Here we go, everybody.
Well, I'm grateful to be the plaintiff for young Australians having, like, the right to free speech. And I feel with this ban in place, we'll be invisible. We won't be able to share our views or opinions, and we won't be able to hear political views or opinions. So we'll just be isolated, and we'll be isolated from our country and the rest of the world.
Authorised by John Ruddock, Digital Freedom Project, 6 Macquarie Street, Sydney.
Yikes. He said we'll be, you know, isolated and invisible. I think that's kind of the point, isn't it? Where I would, you know, extend on my assertion that the government does understand social media. And they're quite willing to risk the potential negative impacts upon young people who will be isolated and invisible. Quite astounding. All right, everybody. So let's get back to the webinar. We are going to finish up and hear from Paul G. Conlon. Hello, everybody. Hello, Leander. How are you? Hello, Kim. We'll read Kim's comment first. They can mutilate their own private parts at 5, but can't go on social media at 16. Go figure. They don't understand the politicians. 16s is a very vulnerable age, and they need their friends. I also think the government do not want them researching the truth. Yes, I tend to agree there, Kim. I tend to agree. All right, so let's get back to the webinar. We're going to screen the share one more time. And we are going to hear from Paul Conlon. Let me just take us up to where Paul is talking about responsibility. All righty. Here we go, everybody. This is Paul G. Conlon.
And more of a question of type. So identification and prohibition assume that safety can be somehow centrally engineered, right? But history has shown us over millennia that resilient kids are born from the household, from the family, not from databases. So if we zoom out for a minute and just say, what's the real issue here? And you
Just to interrupt everybody, I love that. He said, Paul said, resilient kids are born from a family, a household, not a database. Love that.
basically nailed it before. Those parents who said to you they're happy, those parents, let's call it for what it is, who are happy to abdicate their most fundamental role on this earth at the moment to the state for convenience, well, they're stretched thin, aren't they? I'm not saying that's an excuse. Life is challenging. Raising a family, especially doing it well, is one of the most challenging things you'll do. It's also one of the most rewarding things you'll do. And shame on you if you think that convenience outweighs that obligation you have as a parent. But the reality is we do struggle with cost of living pressures. We struggle with social fragmentation. And the government swoops in to fill the gap there, as you described. So I think some of the principles are to strengthen the family, not introduce identification systems. And so what does that look like? Well, there are plenty of existing tools if we want to look at it from a tooling point of view. There's device management stuff. There's the basic premise that you don't need to give your children unfettered access to the cesspit of humanity on the internet until it's appropriate for them. You know, that's a decision gate that's already been passed within the household, and everything we're talking about here is downstream from that. But yeah, I see there's a big role for education. Why don't we, once we alleviate some of the fundamental pressures on parents so they can go back to doing what they've done for millennia, and that is actually raising the next generation, why don't we focus more on education and provide parents the historical tooling they need and some psychological training perhaps that can help with these managing the actual core issues, not the pop-up whack-a-mole symptoms behind this. And if we really want to go down the identification path, the irony here is there's an entire area called self-sovereign identity, SSI. It's a suite of technologies that puts the data in the individual's hand. And there's some really cool maths behind it. It's well-established stuff. It's nothing new. It's tried and tested, and it allows you to do really cool things like prove your age without revealing the data that's derived from, in that case, your birthday. Or it allows you to say, I have a certain qualification without revealing what institution issued that qualification or when it was dated. So you can be very granular about what you release. You might release the latter there to potential employer because that's appropriate, but because you own the data, you can revoke that, and then they no longer have access to it. The SSI suite of technologies is, as I said, well established, and there are private businesses at the moment building functional systems on exactly this technology. So it does beg the question, why are we spending a lot of money on the centralized versions of them? Things that make you go, But yeah, fundamentally, look, online safety is just a small subset of managing the muddy waters of adulthood, isn't it? And I think the best models and principles, going back to your question, are those that support the distribution of that obligation widely amongst all the families. Though, like I said before with you, Michael, you made certain appropriate decisions in your household because you've got the context and you've got the skin in the game. You know, every household should be doing the same. It's not reducible to a birthday. So if we lower some of the friction for parents with some of these other core issues, allow them to get back to their job of parenting, then we'll have far better outcomes beyond the topic of this discussion here. And we need to stop thinking of just outsourcing everything to Canberra.
All right, everybody. So that was Paul G. Conlon there, talking about role of family in education. Like I said, what did Paul say? Children are born from a family, not a database. Yes, the distribution of responsibility should be, amongst the family. Of course, the government needs to get out of our lives, don't they? Hello, Debbie. Debbie says both parents need to work to pay the mortgage. Where do parents have time to do anything? So much pressure put on mothers these days. Exactly. I think that's one of the great points that Paul made was that, I don't know if we can ever get back to that, but, you know, where parents are raising children and parents are not forced, you know, even though the government would like to tell you it's a choice, because they give you daycare subsidies and all these sorts of things. Parents aren't forced to go out and have two working parents and then ultimately leave the children in harm's way, especially when we're talking about daycare centres. Golly gosh, what's happened this year with the abuse revelations. But anyway, you know, and the other things, you know, stop outsourcing to Canberra, you know, and let parents parent, you know. Paul was talking about not having unfettered access, allowing children to have unfettered access to the internet, you know, all these sorts of things. Yeah, it's really about the distribution of responsibility. I agree there. So I did find the webinar from Stand Up Now Australia, Censored at 16. Very, very good last night on the 27th. Was well worth attending. Thank you all very much for joining me. Please make sure you share the show. I'm still preparing my report that I will be detailing. I will be detailing child extortion networks, and this directly relates to the upcoming under 16-year-old social media ban. I did talk the other day about Roblox. So I'm still preparing all of that. Please make sure you keep checking back to Courage is the Cure wherever you might watch, whether that's Facebook, YouTube, X, or Rumble, for that report, because, you know, particularly when we're talking about responsibility, families making those decisions and then helping their children, particularly with levels of access, if you like, with the internet. This directly relates to these child extortion networks, because as we know, you know, even though we've heard from the teenagers today that there'll be that level of isolation, which I think is on purpose, you know, taking away part of the world from teenagers, which, you know, on one hand can be a very good thing, especially when we're talking about child extortion networks. You know, also there has to be that balance, as what Paul was talking about, with the distribution of responsibility. And I think it's very important that, as much as it's horrified me to research this topic of child extortion networks, it's very important, because if we notice with the under 16-year-old social media ban, there's certain gaming platforms, so on and so forth, that are not covered by the under 16-year-old social media ban. So you have to question, when it's well known that these gaming platforms and other platforms, Telegram, are the devil's playground, if you like, of these child extortion networks, you have to wonder why the government hasn't included them under this ban, because after all, isn't it about protecting the children? Anyway, I won't get in too much into that, but please keep checking back to Courage is Secured, totally shadow banned, and I don't want people who are interested to miss that report when it comes out. Kim, you have younger ones, don't you, Robyn? Yes. How are they affected? Not greatly, because like Michael, like Paul, we have had discussions and we do restrict access already. But thank you for asking, Kim. All right, everybody. So I wish you a wonderful Friday. If you haven't seen, I'll just grab one here. I have bee-free hive scents for your car. And they're not an awful, terrible fragrance or anything like that. They're very subtle. You can go along to my Facebook page and find the link for those. I won't be getting any more after all of these are gone. So you can get 4 for $20, including postage. But anyway, all right, everybody. So thank you very much for joining me. I hope you all have a wonderful Friday. And as I said, please make sure you keep checking back to Courage is the Cure, heavily shadow banned, and I will have especially that report about child extortion networks coming up soon on my channel. All right, everybody, make sure you have a wonderful weekend, as I said, and I'll see you all again soon. All right, bye.
Strength of a woman.